Before we jump into today's episode, I wanted to remind those healthcare executives out there that are from small and rural healthcare organizations that Capstone provides complimentary consultations. As you may know, we help small and rural healthcare organizations to be the provider and employer of choice to keep care local and margins strong. Go to capstoneleadership.net and you can fill out the contact form there or actually self-schedule a day and time that works for you. We'd love to partner with you in executing a winning strategy.
So globally, around the world, and we see that like in the Gallup engagement data, right? People aren't engaged. Well, they're not engaged because they came to your workplace to grow, to contribute all they had. And all we're asking for is that 30 or 40% of them. And that is an untapped potential, I think, that as leaders, as a species, we really need to figure out because our future depends on it.
Welcome to Culture Change RX, the podcast for healthcare professionals that are committed to creating a thriving workplace culture, improving the experiences of employees and patients, and ultimately unlocking their organization's next level of potential. I'm Sue Tetzlaff, your host and co-founder of Capstone Leadership Solutions. Join me and my insightful guests each week as we share actionable insights for navigating the crucial people side of the business of healthcare. Subscribe now for a weekly dose of Culture Change RX. Now let's dive into this week's conversation where culture change takes center stage. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Culture Change RX. And today I have the delight of having a guest in the studio. Much more fun than those solo episodes where I'm just talking to myself. Today we have Natasha with us, and we have a conversation teed up around the topic of change. And we'll dive into that after we have a moment here to get to know our guest. And we'll start by having her introduce herself. Welcome, Natasha.
Thank you so much, Sue. It is a delight to be here. And I've been certifying folks on our Spiral Dynamics Change Readiness Index for 20-something years. I have done over 200 certifications around the world with senior leaders and mid-management and consultants and coaches and trainers and government people and all of that. So we've seen a lot of people dealing with a lot of change for a lot of years.
I love meeting new people out there in the world that are passionate about things that I'm passionate in. It makes for great conversation and networking and sharing. So some conversations we've been able to have and find out about each other as we're both very passionate about and interested in the topic of change. And interestingly, I saw when I was reading more about you that some of the work that your company has done is led to workplaces achieving Best Workplaces awards. And we have that delight and honor as well of having one of our clients in particular win 3 awards in a row. And you had a client win 3 awards in a row. So I think that's kind of ironic. And then you wrote a book, and I was co-founder or co-author of a book as well. So we do have a lot in common. And we're going to try to talk about some of those things that we know and love and are passionate about, mainly around change today. So I'm wondering, what's your backstory in how you became fascinated with the topic of change, so much so that you wrote a book?
Yeah, well, thanks for asking, and congratulations to you and your team and your clients for those wins. Those are big. Those are really big. So I remember I finished my MBA and I spent a summer reading every single thing that I possibly could on change. And it struck me as I was reading these things and trying to just absorb them and, quote, master them. Something didn't make sense. And I spent about 5 years in the world of fashion. I ran a division. I was a stylist merchandiser. And what that meant was my job was to know what people were going to want 18 months in advance before they wanted it. So
That sounds like a crystal ball more than anything.
You're trying to put your finger on the pulse of trends. And one of the trends that we missed as an industry. So I was working in Montreal in Canada, and there was this thing called NAFTA. And all the lumberjacks out west were talking about NAFTA. Well, if you're in the fashion business, you don't pay attention to the lumberjacks because that has nothing to do with you.
Yes.
And I think this was the moment really that hit me. I watched as my friends, my suppliers, people I knew started just disappearing. In about a 10-day period, the factors who were the financial institutions funding our contracts, disappeared. They all closed. And I watched some of our inventory going out the door at pennies on the dollar. And essentially, it was like almost like, just a short period. It was like maybe 3 weeks, 6 weeks, something like that. And there's a street, it's Chevenel Street in the kind of industrial area. And there were these, I don't know, 6 buildings, 7 buildings, big, tall buildings. Then on the other side was residential. And they'd always be double parked and triple parked and people running in and out. And it was sort of a scene, from the wonderful Mrs. Maisel. And I was there on, I guess it was the middle of the day on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, and there wasn't a car in sight. I was the only vehicle, and I realized my industry had died. It was a ghost town, and I was sitting in my little sporty car and just crying because I didn't know what had happened.
Mm.
And I vowed that change would never take me by surprise again.
Mm.
Now, I didn't know how I was going to do that. So there's the MBA and, all of that. And then I met a book called Spiral Dynamics and fell in love with it and took the course and fell in love with the writer of the book. And then we spent the next 18 years of our lives together doing certifications around the world, teaching people about human nature and change, and just, traveled to over 15 different countries, supported them with their changes, went through a bunch of our own. But this stuff really did give us that readiness and resilience and the ability to see beyond what was on the surface.
I suspect that all of those years and all of those assessments allowed you to, analyze a lot of data and start to see a lot of patterns and trends. What has the data told you?
Oh my gosh. So we've got spiral dynamics, 2 parts of our data. So there's a spiral side, which is the human nature side. And that's developmental. And we grow and we change and we evolve. And so does our leadership and how we prefer to be led, how we prefer to learn, how we prefer to relate. And then the dynamic side is the change side. And if we go down the whole data part, Sue, I literally could talk for days and
Bet you
days.
could.
But, there are layers in our human nature. And when we understand those, change goes much easier. We can put our finger on the pulse of culture, and we can start doing much better, significantly better as human beings in supporting one another to evolve what is waiting to emerge. So one of the pieces of data that we gathered that was completely tangential to the regular data that we gather is, we'd be in a spiral dynamics training and we'd, go through the stuff that we were going through during certification. And we'd ask people, how many of you are only contributing, 30, 35, maybe 40% of your potential to this organization? And the majority of the hands would go up. It'd be like 75%.
Mm.
And then the follow-up question is, well, Are your managers happy? Are your leaders happy? 100% of the hands go up. So what we learned, and it didn't matter whether we were in, I don't know, Montreal or Milan, right, in Sydney or in Los Angeles or in London, same stuff. Melbourne, same stuff. It didn't matter if we were in Ecuador, right? So globally, around the world, and we see that like in the Gallup engagement data, right? People aren't engaged. Well, they're not engaged because they came to your workplace to grow, to contribute all they had. And all we're asking for is that 30 or 40% of them.
Mm.
And that is an untapped potential, I think, that as leaders, as a species, we really need to figure out because our future depends on it.
Wow, that's enlightening, really, right there. It's a huge opportunity for every organization, every group, every industry around the world is this untapped potential. And, in our work, healthcare, think about it if a nurse is only giving 30%. I mean, what's on the other side of that?
Yeah, and not that she's running herself ragged,
Yes, yes,
right,
do just that,
to
right?
give only that.
Yeah, yeah.
It's because of all the friction in the way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not a personal flaw necessarily, is what we're talking about here. We're talking about a systematic
A systemic,
opportunity. Yeah.
cultural, organizational leadership set of issues that no one has yet solved.
So it's really about recognizing that there's this untapped potential and then unleashing it.
Yes, absolutely. So, and that is actually coming through in our data. Just how many people know how much they have to give and the deep pain in not allowing that expression somewhere.
Hmm.
People want to give all they have.
You mentioned Gallup poll and engagement. And so we do get asked the question a lot. How do we engage our employees? How do we engage our employees? What do we have to do? And what I see is that it really is about creating structures and opportunities for people to engage. Like they want to engage. But if we don't create a structure, a pathway, a mechanism for that to actually happen, then they're actually very frustrated. The organization wants higher engagement, the employee wants to engage, but it's like there's no connection, there's no something that makes that happen. And a simple thing in our partner organizations, which are healthcare organizations that we work with for a minimum of 26, 27 months, to move them through developing systems and structures that support long-term positive change, is creating employee-driven teams. So now we've got this team that's highly purposed, like they've got a really important purpose for the organization and they're invited to contribute. So now we've got a structure, we've got a mechanism. So this nurse who day to day might feel untapped and frustrated, even that they want to contribute, they want to fix some of the things that every day they are faced that they're broken. Now they have a place where they can actually feel like that they have an outlet for their ideas, that they're heard, that they can make a difference. But, it's not a judgment of the individual people if they're maybe not engaging. It's just that we haven't provided a pathway or a structure or given them those opportunities where they can engage.
Yeah, absolutely. Every like to encourage leaders to think about the context that they're creating. And that is exactly what you're talking about is how do we create a context to bring out the best that people have to contribute.
Yeah. Yeah. I like how you worded that. I liked how you phrased that. I see it differently just by the way you describe it in that way. You're enlightening me here.
Well, you are doing from your professional background and from the work that you have done that you're so successful, whether you call it instinct or professionalism or your experience or all of that, what you do and what you do with your clients, in a sense, is you've tapped in to some of what other people don't see. And
Mm.
that's why you've been able to make these massive changes and team up with your clients to do that because you instinctively understood that. And I've got benefit of some of your change readiness index data. So I see you a little bit differently now because I can see into you.
Yeah, I love that you shared that with me, like in preparation for our conversation today. I actually did complete the Spiral Dynamics Change Readiness Index, and so yeah, Natasha knows a bit more about my brain and my sense of being when it comes to the topic of change from that tool. And it truly is a human side of change. Just doing the index and reading the questions and contemplating my answers to individual questions around change, it is a human side. It's a touchy-feely side for sure.
It is essential, the
Mm,
essential side. You know what? If you don't mind me mentioning it, I want to share with
yeah.
you and your audience what makes you really special when it comes to change.
Well, I
And
would love to hear your insights on
right?
that. My goodness. We do have editing features of the software. And if I don't like what you're just going to tell the world, I'll
He's
just,
gonna like disappear.
I'll just ask Matt to take it out. Just kidding.
I mean, our tool has 10 different dimensions. But what I noticed on your results is there are two that are really important in the way people absorb change. And I sometimes use the metaphor of the football player and the baby. We were also talking about the wombat and the kangaroo.
We
Like,
were,
we
we
could
were.
do this. So if you were to feed change to a baby, right, you would feed with a baby-sized spoon. Right. And what that means is little bit by little bit. And when they go, no, you kind of pull back and then you tease them a little bit and then you get them to eat their food. And
Yeah.
then there's the football players. And you can't feed a football player a baby sized spoon. So you feed a giant football player spoon. And they
Mm.
want it fast and they want a lot and they're not even going to chew. Sorry, football players. So beautiful about your results. And we don't see this very often. And I think this is what makes you so unique and special in the way you tackle change is that you understand both, you can flex to both, and you can translate for both.
Mm.
So that makes you highly, let's say, you have a high ability to absorb different forms of change and help your clients with those forms of change so they're digested really well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 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 it does. I wonder if some of that comes from just keen assessment skills developed as a clinician when you're caring for patients, when you're helping somebody heal or be healthier or stronger. Again, there's probably the baby and the football analogy. Sometimes it's going to be a small dose, sometimes it's going to take big things or big things are wanted even. But yeah, it's the one size does not fit all. And I think that you're sharing with me something I hadn't really thought about is customization and the assessment necessary to know what is right now for this current situation and understanding the situation. It's kind of the nursing process. We don't just treat, we assess first to understand what is the right pathway. Is it small? Is it large? Is it fast? Is it slow?
So one of the things you're doing here, Sue, is you're saying, well, it's the nursing background. It's like, no, this is you.
This is my human. That's
This
probably
is
why I became a
you.
nurse.
Yeah, because I mean, we've literally done tens of thousands of these. And
Mm.
we do them in English, we do them in Spanish, in German, in Dutch, in Arabic. Like we've got them translated. And your particular profile is extremely unique and it is not that prevalent typically, if we've got the football guys, they're the football guys. If we got the baby people, they're the baby people. And the two shall not usually meet. And then the two usually get into a lot of conflict with one another.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it?
So
Yeah.
this is a you thing, Sue. Embrace what makes you special and know that this is an incredible strength that you bring to your clients, and your clients should know this about
Mm,
you. This
yeah.
is why you can bridge things that they can't. A, you can see them, and then B, you've got the background and experience to know what to do to make that happen.
Mm, mm. Yeah, and using the example of teams. So let's say we put together a patient experience team that's really purposed with organization wide efforts to elevate the patient experience, making it more safe and satisfying, and having employees really contribute to that, engage in that, do it with them, not to them, let them really own it as the people closest to it. And on that team, if they were to each take this profile, this index, we would learn that we would have a mix. Probably not everyone like me, where they can do fast, they can do slow, they can do big, they can do small, but they're usually leaning one way or another. And then now we're all in a group and they
Yeah.
have to decide which is the best way to go for the organization. Because it's not just about them at that point as individual team members, it's about them collectively deciding
Yes.
what is the organization approach to making this so. And these teams are probably one of the most fascinating parts of our work, is putting together these teams that are championing change in their organization, that come from such diverse backgrounds in work, in life, in personality, and even in change readiness and approach. So
Yeah, well, like I said, we've done these all over the world with all kinds of different organizations. And these differences in the ability to absorb change and where people are in that change process and how ready and resilient they are can be the source of conflict
mhm,
unintentionally because people don't understand it. And this isn't personality. Personality is a whole
right.
other layer that is absolutely needed,
Yeah.
but it doesn't cover this. And
Mhm,
we have seen teams in long term conflict understand their preferences for change, sit back and then just watch, in an afternoon, all of that conflict disappear because they suddenly understand one another. And that diversity is critical to get different perspectives and views and innovation in solving tough problems. And,
mhm.
back to what we were talking about earlier, that context that an organization creates to unleash that innovation and that collaboration and more aligned ways of having change work, that all ties in together. It's a system.
It is a system. There's so much and you've contributed to people and to organizations as it relates to change. And we could take this conversation all sorts of places and go deeper. We could go wide. But I know that one of the things that you provided our team with, that was really very a helpful way to help digest this, is something you call the hard truths. So
Mhm.
what are hard truths, and maybe can you give us an example of a couple of them?
Yeah, these are hard truths that leaders need to hear and sometimes will ignore for the sake of expediency. And these are the things that will make change harder, more painful, more difficult, and put you in that 70% of change efforts that fail.
Yes. Yeah.
So, shall I do our first one?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay, so self diagnosis is self sabotage. And what I've seen around the world is leaders going, all right, Natasha, we have a communication problem, fix the communication problem. Or we have a team problem, fix the team problem. Or we have a culture problem, right? So, and it's like, well, how do you know? Well, because I know this happened and that happened and the other thing happened. All right. we don't have the data on it. And because we specialize in the human side of organizational life and development and change, we get data that nobody else gets. And if you're doing self-diagnosis, you are trying to read what's happening from inside the jar, meaning you can't see the label, you can't see the symptoms. No doctor would go do a flyby and go, all right, you got a headache, you got brain tumor, we'll take it out. You do tests.
Mm-hmm.
When it
Yeah.
comes to organizational life, we don't do the necessary tests.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. There's our love for data again, right? Data, it tells us two things. One, what to work on, and two, if what we're working on is working. So it's hard to see that just being subjective. You really do have to have some sort of diagnostics in data in some way, shape, or form.
You are absolutely right. And that's hard truth number two.
Who is it?
Because we are, in a sense, and I can almost hear it. Like I can hear people listening to this going, but we are drowning in data.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's the right data for the right things. Right?
Yeah.
So I remember having a conversation with some M&A people and saying, hey, so in the world of mergers and acquisitions, 67 to 87% of them fail due to culture. Yeah, that's true. And that was true 40 years ago, and it's true today. Yeah, that's true. So what are you doing to measure culture? For some, and there were a few who were like, we use DISC. DISC is a personality assessment. You're measuring the wrong thing, and you don't have the right data for the thing that is the biggest problem.
I was speaking at an event earlier this week, and I was second on the agenda. And before me was a whole session on merger and acquisitions in healthcare. And they were talking about the very thing you just mentioned about culture. And we're still talking about it as of this week. We're talking of.
Yeah, people talk about culture, but they don't have a language for it. They don't have terminology for it. And they're not really connecting how the humans interact to create a culture. So it's still a very surface. It's like it's friendly, or it's performance, or it's
Yeah.
client centered. That can mean a lot of different things and show up very differently.
Yeah.
And we measure that. And we need to measure it if we want to get our finger on the pulse of culture.
Yeah. Yeah. We love Gallup's definition of culture. This is how we do things around here. And so if you want to change culture, we have to change how we do things around here.
So I'll take that deeper, if you don't
Yeah,
mind.
please
Right.
do. Please
So
do.
how we do things are surface level behaviors. What most people don't ask, what I see you asking is, why are we doing those things? And what's the context that makes those things the right things or the wrong things?
Yeah.
We go deeper than that even. And we say, let's look at the connection between people. How are they vibing together? Right? What are the culture is the relationships that are happening within people, between people, and around people. And if we don't have our finger on the pulse of those different ways of relating at a deeper level, at a developmental level, we are always going to be missing what's happening in culture.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because the behavior follows the relating. And the
Yeah.
relating follows the development, the developmental flows in human beings.
Yeah. And at the other end of that is often measurable results, the
Yes.
outcomes of the work we do together as humans, and always changing that to hopefully get better outcomes in healthcare for our
Yes.
patients, for our
Yes.
communities. I guess that's where the rubber meets the road, right? Is to have a high performance culture where on the other end of that, whatever your industry is that you're meeting your mission, you're meeting your vision, and on a personal level, one patient at a time, one employee at a time, one provider at a time. It's better than it was yesterday or the day before. And we're on that trajectory of positive change. So Well, I said 30 minutes would go by really fast. Was I right? 30 minutes, totally. Like we could talk for hours. This won't be last conversation. You and I will probably noodle around this topic offline a lot in follow up to today. But if we were closing out today's, episode with maybe one more nugget, one more piece of wisdom, one more thing that you would like to share with our audience about making change work, what would that be, Natasha?
Well, your people are not resisting change. Just think about every time you've wanted a change and what you'll do to make that happen. They are resisting your change because your change is designed using your preferences, your mirrors, and your natural motivational flows, which are not their natural motivational flows. So if you design change to be congruent towards the ways that people are actually motivated, you will find that all of the running around, all of the heartache, all of the bad numbers will transform and be a lot easier.
Yeah.
I cover a lot of that in my book, Making Change Work.
Yes. So how do people find out more about you, your work, your index, your book, the work that you're doing out there?
You can connect with me on LinkedIn, Natasha Todorovic-Cowan. Those are two very difficult, strange last names.
We'll make sure it's in the show notes.
Yes. And I'm at Natasha at spiraldynamics.org. I'll give you all the links and you can add those.
We sure will. Thank you for your contribution to Culture Change RX. And this has been a lovely conversation with value for our audience. And I welcome our audience back each Wednesday to listen in on another episode on Culture Change RX. And again, thank you, Natasha, for being here.
It has been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to Culture Change RX. If you found value in today's episode and you are a believer in fostering change in healthcare, join us in making a difference. Follow, rate, and review our podcast on your favorite platform. Share it with colleagues and your network. Together, we can make a lasting impact. Until next week, keep inspiring positive change.